I don't think it would, but good. Good.
My kids' costumes and toys come into play.
Oh.
Really great.
We'll have a good time then.
Done.
Or if I need to transition from like a heavy mental thing to another heavy mental thing.
So we've sent all the article out
Which is why I've been out
for the local
so long.
magazine. Yeah, so I'll send a copy, but I haven't seen it in print. I don't know when that's due out. Mark, sorry, do you know when that is out for the local?
He's gonna still leave, but he said they're gonna
Might sit this one.
US build it. Maybe put it more on it. Already.
Okay, am I on?
Okay.
Sound on?
No, I don't sound on. Hold on. This is good fun.
So they
1, 2,
actually
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Why is that not working?
So
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12,
Has it
13,
worked?
14.
and Steve said
Yes.
prematurely together. So we went to
Chapter
the thing.
8.
He said we jumped early because
We can put it on.
Okay.
all the don't have it ready.
That's
So
why I was
they-
curious how
So
it
it seems like
1,
they're
2,
gonna-
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh,
watch. I would like.
maybe it is
Are
working.
you going to stay connected or involved?
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15,
Nice guy.
16, 17. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Why is that not coming out? 1, 2, 3. I think it might be coming out on the live stream. I've got no way of telling, and I'm presenting an.
Is she supposed to?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Oh, there you go.
That's better. 1, 2, 3, 4.
There, you're there.
There we go.
Take the headset, doesn't Mark know?
Okay.
We'll talk about it.
Apologies if this is a little bit loud. I'll try and talk quietly. I can't control both bits.
Did we go back there?
No, I think we'll be all right, but thanks, Rob. Okay, so we want to jump straight into the session that we've got, which I wanted to start with this simple question. Who looked at the agenda and thought this was going to be the best session? Was really excited by it.
You've got 2 hands, Mark, 2 hands.
They made a sarcastic one.
And your wife didn't put hers up.
No. Simone told me earlier that apparently I did some session when we were at Bible College on looking after electrical cables and sound cables, and apparently it was the most boring session, but she still found it exciting because she fancied me at the time, so. Anyway, so brand awareness. So I'm going to talk about why I came to kind of feeling this was a really important subject to look at as we kind of go through. But over the last sort of 6 to 9 months, I've kind of made me think we need to revisit this, and for a variety of reasons, and we're going to discuss later on why some key questions that I think will really determine how we take this forward as a wider group, as a wider family. But I started off by looking at, so what is brand? I looked this up last night, and according to some definition on some website somewhere, this was the most suitable thing that I thought. But it said, a good branding will create customer loyalty. Loyal customers will continue to support you in good and bad times. They will spread a positive message to people they know. Their influence will introduce new people to your company. Now, I know that's all about a company, but I thought in terms of who we are, if you change company for church or to go church, a good branding will create customer loyalty. Loyal partners, let's call them, will continue to support you in good and bad times. They'll spread a positive message to people they know who aren't part of us. Their influence will introduce new people to go church. And I just thought, in terms of branding, yeah, it's recording, yeah. I thought this was really important. In fact, Barney is joining us live streaming at the moment, even though he's he's listening, because he's just sent me a message saying on, which is brilliant. So hi, Barney. But yeah, I think there's a really important thing around branding, that sometimes it can get lost in all of the rules and the regulations, and are we doing it right, and oh, it's a boring, dry thing. But the reality is if branding is done right, then it is a useful thing rather than a negative thing.
Yeah.
And so I was kind of thinking about it this morning, because I was like, Lord, I really need to be able to ground this. And the Lord kind of led me to Psalm 19, which I'm very quickly going to just turn up, because I was like, Lord, are you into brand? That was kind of my question with God this morning. Like, where does brand fit? And God just took me straight to this. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth. Their words to the ends of the world. So the Lord has a brand. So then I was like, well, what is your brand? Okay, this is like crazy kind of talk, I know. But God was like, just showed me, and it was really interesting what Jerry shared in our time of prayer as we started off, because I then started reading the next bit after the bit he was reading, because it's so fitted with what God had shown me this morning. Everywhere that God shows up, glory shows up. Okay, so you can look at when Solomon dedicates the temple, what shows up? The glory of the Lord. When I am assuming when the transfiguration happened to Jesus, the glory of the Lord was there. The angels of the Lord turned up to announce Jesus' birth, and glory shone around, wasn't it? Wherever you go, glory shows up. So almost in a way, I was like, Lord, what is your brand? And God just went, glory. I was like, okay, that's interesting. And the bit that Jerry had shared was from Exodus. And what does Moses say? Moses says, in the bit after we just read this morning, show me your glory. And then God has a little chat. And then it says, and when the glory of God passed by in front. See, wherever the Lord is, there is glory. And so there is a consistency, there is the brand, if you will, remains the same all throughout. Old Testament, New Testament, there's always glory. And when you go to heaven, obviously, there's even more glory. So in a way, branding, and I just want to kind of share this thought, and isn't it great we can put our own logo on here now? But it's more than just a logo. Branding isn't just about having a logo, although the logo is part of branding, but it is more than that. But, if you look at all these logos, they're all familiar. And I'm aligning us with Nike and Apple here, in terms of the familiarity to us. But if you see the tick sign, if you see that apple with a slight bite of it, you know immediately who that belongs to. But you also know the kind of, it's not just the logo, because it reflects on what that company or organization stands for. You know what you're going to get with it. You know the kind of quality, you know the kind of how they go about things. I know with Apple, I've got to be careful what I say here, because I'm probably still under certain restrictions. But I know when Apple was looking to launch in the UK, I know the story of how they ended up working with O2, and one of the reasons was because O2 was the most aligned telecoms company with Apple in terms of its branding, and they wanted to make sure that when their product was launched here, it wasn't just about selling a product, it was about the experience and everything that went with it, because Apple stood for something more than just selling a device. Okay, so the branding is more than just a logo. And, you know, as I was saying earlier, we end up with a consistency in branding. So you don't find with branding that one day it's one thing and the next day it's another thing and then the next day it's something slightly different, and there's a variance here. And that's why I found it quite interesting what God was showing me this morning, is that glory shows up everywhere. God doesn't change, does he? He's the same yesterday, today and forever. We know that. But actually his glory always turns up in the same thing. There is a consistency all the time in what the Lord does, but actually that's reflected in branding as well. So branding also connects with people. People understand it, they know what it means, how it relates, but also it means that they can kind of feel comfortable with it because they know what they're getting. It's a way of people kind of really getting hold of what something stands for. So here we've got a couple of pictures of the Nike have done. So you've got the logos on there. You've also got their little strapline, Just Do It. It's all roughly in the same place on their posters, these posters, 3 different posters. There's 3 different sports people there doing 3 different activities. The fonts and the imagery and where things are is very, very similar. There's a consistency across all 3 pictures. And that's something that is important when we're coming on to branding. So, I have a question this morning. Who knows what our branding guidelines are? So out of the room of, I don't know, there's roughly 14 of us, I can't remember, 13 of us today. There's a few hands that have gone up. There's a few hands that are sort of half up, sort of slightly not sure. Okay? There's a few that haven't even gone up at all. And yet we're the people in charge of Go Church. So there's a question that I felt, and this is kind of a bit of a direct question, but if not, why not? Why do we not know? And that's not to say, why not, we're bad people. That's why not, because how are we going to change this? Because I think one of the things that's really important, if we want to actually have a consistency across Go Church, then we ourselves have got to be consistent with how we apply all these things so that it works. There's a number of things we could go into discussing in a minute about why and things around that. And we may have, if I have time, I'll allow a bit of discussion around that. But I really want us to kind of focus on not how we've ended up here, but how we're going to take it forward so that we can begin to really look at improving this area and make us strong. Because if we're saying that branding connects with people, and we're talking about how do we bring people in, whether it be people to just come and be part of our churches, or whether it be people that are going to come and then plant churches, we need to make sure that we've got a branding that is consistent. Otherwise, the Go Church message is not going to be seen and consistent with everybody. And so that's something for us to look at. So we have corporate guidelines. This is one of the early versions of everything and back in 2018, but I just want to kind of just show you some of the stuff that we looked at. So our letterhead, this was when, back in the day when we used envelopes and sent things in the post, but our business cards, stuff like that. There's a consistency around where the logo is, the size of the logo, the typeface, the font that's used. There's a consistency across everything. Now, whether we like it, whether we think it's the best it could be, at the moment, this is what the brand guidelines are. So this is what we need to kind of be following. Again, just to use something totally different, the certificate of baptism that's been produced, that we have as a resource to be used in all of our churches within Go Church family. You know, there's a consistency about this. It fits with the same font size, the logo's the same size, same location. There are things that happen. So I then you kind of think, okay, it doesn't just apply to sort of written or documented stuff that may go on social media or whatever it may be. But then you kind of look at our building. So this was what the first version. So I looked at this picture last night. I was like, my goodness, how bad did that building look? It's shocking. You got so used to the new thing. It's like I can't remember it looking as bad as that, but it did. And this had some of of Paul's designs overlaid on it. This was then what he suggested we went to as one of our first sort of like design things, which still fitted with the big logo in the top corner, things like that. There's a consistency coming across with everything. I went out this morning and this is what it actually looks like now, which again was some adaptations on the designs that Paul had gone. We worked with him, and it looks amazing, doesn't it, in comparison to that miserable grey building? But again, doesn't this show we branded the building in line with the Go Church feel, and it looks better. Okay, it looks so much better. So one of the thoughts I had around this whole thing was, and I've kind of like given it a title of awareness and training, because I kind of think there's a need for us as a Go Church family to look at awareness. I was having a chat with Rob recently about some stuff and to do with, that was linked to this, and he said something to me which I half suspected, but it confirmed what I thought. It was like he had no idea where our brand guidelines were. So here we have somebody who's just joined a Go Church family. So within the last 12 months has gone from being, toe in the water to now fully in charge of Bradford. So that's a great accelerated journey. And it's fantastic, but actually doesn't know where to get hold of our guidelines. Doesn't know it. So we've got a hole there in terms of somebody who's come in from the outside. Last year, there was somebody in Manchester who, as we're beginning to delegate out and trying to get people to take ownership, responsibility, and pick things up, somebody wanted to create a flyer for one of the ministries that they were involved with within the church, so they could let the church know some important information about an activity that was coming up, which you're kind of going, as a leader, brilliant, fantastic. So then they sent it through, and I took one look at it and I went, that can never go out. It was horrendous, because it didn't have anything that aligned to the standards, the quality, the guidelines of stuff that we do. So I was left with a bit of a like, okay, Julian, can you just fix this for us? Because we need to get this right. But it raised a question for me. If we're going to widen the funnel, which is something we talk about from a leadership perspective, which is really important, if we're going to widen the funnel and we want to do that, we've got to make sure that the wider funnel people know what the brand guidelines are. Otherwise, we're going to end up producing things that are not in line with what we want. And we've got to make that work so that whether you have the latest software that maybe Julian and Paul Thompson and other people work off, or whether we're working on more basic pieces of equipment, we've got to have an idea of how to make that work to fit within our brand guidelines. And I think if we sit here, I'm going to be quite strong here on this, but if we sit here and go, I can't do it because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, then we're approaching it from the wrong angle. We need to approach this from that, how are we going to make it work, not other reasons why we don't make it work. If we sit here and go, oh, I don't like this bit and that bit, and I'll be honest, there are some bits I'm not 100% sold on, so we're not coming at this from, I'm here to sell it, because I'm not. But I do think if we don't get on board with it in the way that kind of goes, do you know what, whether I 100% like this or not, this is what our brand guidelines are at the moment. Maybe that's a different discussion at another time, and there's some adaptations and stuff we can do. But at the moment, we need to get on board in terms of being able to then widen it to the furthest possible reaches. So the question I asked earlier around, do we all know where it is? Do we all understand it? And we don't. I think shows us some work we've got to do to try and help get this along. So, awareness and training. And the reason for this is, how do we protect the Go Church brand? And I'm just going to bring this all the way back to that whole thing about glory in the Lord, okay? What does the Lord do? Jesus talks about glorify your name, glorify this. Jesus does things, God does things, doesn't he? For the sake of his reputation, God will do things, doesn't he? In the sense of, he is not going to allow his reputation to be tarnished. He's not going to forsake or let down. Why? Because he wants the whole of mankind to know his glory. So he wants that to happen. So if that's God's heart, then in a scaled down, really simplistic way, then I think we probably need to have the same heart towards how we protect the Go Church brand. So I have some questions here. The first question is, and these are going to be some of our discussion points, okay, that I want us to discuss around the table. So how do we help people to know our guidelines, and how do we train existing people? So whether that is, and then the next question that goes alongside that is, how do we train new people as we grow? So I'm trying to think of this in sort of two sort of camps here. So one, we've got 4 churches and a number of other people who are attached to Go Church family in various ways. How do we begin to look at making sure that everybody is aware we have the guidelines, know what they are, and how do we train people to use them? And these are questions I'm asking, not because I've got the answers, but these are things I'm thinking about going, how on earth are we going to do this? Because this is it's a massive area. Do you know what I mean? It's a massive kind of task, really, because, I started the day, who thought this was going to be the most exciting session? The point is, this isn't an easy sell to people. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Some people will jump all over it, but the majority of people are probably going to go, well, what's that to me? That's not as important as going and winning the Lost, or that's not as important as, X, Y, and Z. And it may not be in sort of some ways, but it's going to help us to do all those other things in a more effective way. If you walk into our building here, I can see Pastor Ron pointing around to all the various things. If you look around the building in here now, since there's been a lot more work done in it, it is so much better to come in and look and go, oh, so all the chevrons are in place. Julian did a fantastic job hand painting all those. How he got them to be aligned like he did, I have no idea, because they are phenomenal. And we haven't finished everything in here yet. There's signage to go up, there's other things to go in place, which will just help improve it. But when somebody comes in now, or, go back to the pictures I was showing you a few moments ago, when people used to turn up to that building, the miserable grey one, whereas when they turn up to what it is now, is far more appealing to people. So in the same way that somebody in the car park or on the door welcoming, we talk about the importance of those kind of things. First impressions matter. And I know later on we're going to be talking about things like social media and website and other key factors that are equally important in this. But all these things are kind of only going to work properly for us if we've got everybody on board with the brand guidelines. So today really is kind of like a working session. Tomorrow when I do this with everybody, that's why it's in today and tomorrow, because it is so vital that we get everybody, as many people in the wider leadership. Because I can imagine, to be quite honest, here in Manchester, if you went and asked all of the leaders that turn up tomorrow when they walk in, do you know what our brand guidelines are? They'd probably all turn around and say, yeah, I think we've got a logo. That's about as much. Maybe some chevrons. It's green. I think that's about as much as we probably get. And that says that we've got a lot of work to do ourselves here in Manchester. But there's, I think across the whole family, this is an area that we've kind of got to kind of work on. And I know if you think back to when Pastors Jeff and Beth Jones came over here, and when we went over to them in 2008, was it? Sometime around then. One of the things that they had as I don't know whether it was a value or what it was, but they had the "we all screen green." They had to work with their team to get everybody up onto the same page. Now that was around behaviours, wasn't it, and attitudes in terms of amongst the people that were serving, the volunteers. But that applies here as well. And I kind of want us to try and see how we can get it. So on your tables where you are, What time did you say we had till 12:30?
Is that our Julia? Is half an hour? Oh, yeah. Yeah, to 12:30.
Okay, so we'll try and finish by 25 past, just to make sure that we can definitely give Julia the time that she needs. So if we can spend the next 10 minutes just chatting around our tables around how are we going to take this. And just before you do that, this is the most important slide of today, okay? This is going to help, because if you go to gochurch.cc/brand, you can find all our brand guidelines.
Excellent.
So we have them all there, okay? And I've just taken a couple of screenshots of the actual screens just to kind of show them there. So we have it all there. Now, I'm not saying that what's there and available is necessarily the best way to train people and explain it to people and all that kind of stuff. And that may be a piece of work that we need to go away and look at to see how does this work so we can train people more effectively within it. But it is here. And to be honest, hand on heart here, I kind of was a bit like, the other day I was like, I know we've got it somewhere. I think it's /brand. I'll check. If not, I'll go and ask Paul Thompson where it was. And thankfully it was there. But even I'm questioning it, and I've been involved in lots of conversations around some of this. So if that's where I'm kind of thinking, I can appreciate probably the majority of us sat in here either had no idea or had completely forgotten. So this is kind of like, it's there, but going back to our questions, how are we going to help people be aware of what we have, and how are we going to train them of the people that are already here? But then secondary to that, and this is another important question here, how are we going to help new people who come in? So we're talking all the time about growing the family, and if we take what Pastor Matt was saying yesterday in his what do we see in 7 years time or 10 years time, or how those time frames, if we're going to go from 4 churches to, what did he get up to, 22 was it? Something like that. Within that short period of time, that's another 22 set of leaders who potentially aren't even in this route, aren't even connected with us at all. So how are they going to come on and be up to speed and know what to do with this? Right. So this is why I think this is quite an important question at this time, because this is going to be part of factoring in. There's loads of other things that they're all going to have to know, like health and safety and safeguarding and all these other things that we have to do in terms of, leading things. But I'm just looking at corporate brand guidelines today. So any questions about what we've got to do now? Any comments? No.
Well done.
I think Paul has an email or a brochure. He worked through some of how you convert particular image that was used, and he shows you how to implement the corporate settings.
So that is on this, in this bit here.
Because I thought that for me was really helpful. Because it's the training how to implement.
So down here, you've got the download the corporate guidelines PDF doc, and then there's all sorts of other things. But in there, it starts to go through a whole. Oh, it's downloading.
It takes one particular picture.
It kind of he works through certain things on different pages. Can't remember where it is, but it's somewhere in this document. There's a number of things that kind of go through to show.
That document's better almost than the guidelines.
That is the guidelines. That document is.
There is another one.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll have to make sure that everything's up into the one place, and maybe that's a piece of work that we need to take away. There are questions I have around all of this, okay? I'm being really, really honest with this, because Beirut started trying to get a Go Kids logo that we were unaware was happening, yet we run Go Kids here. So there's some family communication and working around some of these things to ensure that we have the right things in place. So we're going to have to look at all of that, like what happens when somebody wants to do something, how does that work? I got really, really annoyed last November because we got given a wonderful new hoodie, and I looked at the hoodie and I went, who signed that off? Somebody's just gone and done that. because that's not our Love Grow Go logo. And so I sent Paul a message going, "Hi Paul, I've just been given a great hoodie. Did you see the logo before it went out?" And he was like, he sent me like a smiling emoji face back and was like, yeah, that's the new one. And I was like, okay, I didn't even know that we now had a different Love Grow Go approved logo. But it kind of highlights to me some of the slight disconnect that we've got in some of the brand guidelines to enable us that I think are kind of like not helping in terms of how we are getting everybody on board. So it's one of those conversations that we're kind of needing to kind of have, I think, really urgently, so that we actually get everybody up to speed, working with everything, so we make ourselves look really good.
Yeah.
And that's why tomorrow morning's session is called Looking Good, which I thought was a bit...
Mark, I think it might be helpful if you explain what you picked up on, because it's not in line or something.
Yeah, so if you look at the back there, that's the Love Grow Go logo that was originally approved. Whereas if you look on the hoodie, there's now an exclamation mark after the go, and there's a different alignment of the letters.
The Go,
I
the
didn't
two
want it to-
Gs.
I didn't want it to be churchy. I wanted it to be fashionable. It's my fault. I take
No.
the blame.
She's
No.
only getting the point.
I know the point. I'm just trying to show it was my fault. I was trying to surprise you guys.
Hey, we like the
We love
hoodies.
the hoodie. We love the hoodie.
I know the point.
No, I want to, please let me express this. What he's saying is that Paul unilaterally updated that without thinking about the ripple effects of the fact that you put it huge over here on the wall.
Yeah.
It's easy to change a hoodie, but it's pretty hard to change a wall.
Yeah.
So that's the point I think I want to draw attention to.
And we talk about consistency across everything, and suddenly we've changed something.
Exactly, the one person who constantly pulls us up on
Yeah.
everything is
Yeah.
the one making
It's
the
pretty
mistake.
awesome that you pulled him up. Yeah.
But it's also why we've deliberately begun to move away from Go Church Manchester. We just have Go Church more and more on all the things we're producing at the moment. So it allows it to be used by other places. If they like what we do, then it's not limiting.
And also, within the context of that, when you turn up here in Manchester, you know you're in Manchester. If you don't know you're in Manchester, you need to be here because we need to pray for you. So, I mean, it's like, you know,
Exactly.
it just needs to say Go
It's not
Church on
bad.
it. So these things are, Julia.
I was wondering. I just have two thoughts almost for future discussion, not
Yeah.
today, because we're happy to submit to all guidelines and all of that, and be wanting to be along with the brand and all of that. Two thoughts for the future, like almost future discussions, are because we've mentioned this is appealing, but who? I would like to ask the question: who is it appealing to? Do we have other eyes on this? Like, do we have people who are 20 looking at our logo and actually giving us honest feedback? Do we have people who are in their 30s? Because we say it's appealing, but when we talk about who's actually giving us honest feedback, it's a very small group that has particular eyes for something, and I think we could
Old fogies.
Just say we're older.
No, I'm older. I mean, I would like people a decade younger than me and two decades younger than me. We actually should have people looking at our stuff with different eyes than ourselves. Get people who are willing to actually not be yes men, but give us honest feedback. So I would like to ask in the future, we're not changing anything right now. I mean, we need to just, like you said, get on the same page. But for the future, any changes, I would like to ask the question, who do we appeal to? And could we have other eyes on things other than, like, people over 40? And then second thought is, in including everyone in our discussion, like, why, I would like to know why, because we've encouraged, like, a bunch of people to come. We have somebody, a new children's worker coming tomorrow, and hospitality people we've encouraged to come. Why do they need to know about brand guidelines? Because I just don't want to, like basically, why do we want, if we want everyone to know, why do we want them to know people who aren't doing the flyers, who aren't making the decisions?
Okay.
Why is it so important?
That's a great
I would
question.
like to
That's
know
a
why.
great question. So,
You missed the very beginning.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I missed the beginning.
no, that's fine. I'll send you a copy of the video later. And you can I think it's a really good question. There's two really good question points you raised there. Because I have written down on a piece of paper or on my phone or somewhere, I've gone, who actually signs our brand guidelines off? Who is the person or the group? Because I don't know, in the sense of we actually don't have a process in place for this. And I am very aware, and this is a massive thing that we all are going to have to kind of get over in some ways. The style that is liked on this table may be totally different from the style that's liked on this table, which is totally different from the style that's liked on that table. But then on that table, the style that's liked by Simone may be different from the style that's liked by Becky, that's maybe different again from the style that's liked by Kenny. So people of a similar age can like totally different things. Okay, so I think there's a danger that you cannot please everybody with the style, and at some point we just have to draw a line and go, this is what we like, well not necessarily like, but this is what we're doing. But I agree with you, we do need to have some voice of young people inputting in, old people inputting in. We need to have every kind of bit into that, and we need to work out who is signing it off, because otherwise there's a danger, and I'm saying this in all humility because I really respect what Paul does for us, but there's a danger that Paul becomes the one who decides everything for Go Church, and yet he's not sat here. So should he be sat here? Should he not? There's a conversation piece around all of that I think needs to be had at some point around how, what, where, when, who, all those kind of things. So that's the first thing, but I agree with you, we do need to have some conversations around that. The second thing around, you've got a children's worker coming, you've got somebody else coming, which is amazing, brilliant, exactly what we want. One of the reasons I've left it in for tomorrow is because of the fact that when you start getting other people doing stuff, they immediately, if they have no concept that we have a way of doing things, will start doing. So our logo is supposed to go either, I think it's top left or bottom right. Yeah. Yet we in this room, on our PowerPoint presentations, have had it top left, top right, bottom right. It's not always had the right spacing around it. Now that's just a simple thing. And does it matter for us here? But actually, if we're not doing it right, then it's going to filter down to everybody else. And so then it becomes a whole, there's just a big piece of work around this that we want to make sure there's consistency across so that everybody knows that we're all delivering that standard of excellence across every age, every ministry, every group. But this is the very reason for the discussion. So I want to get onto the discussion now, because how do we help your children's worker know in a way that's going to work for them? And I think that's partly what the question is. How do we actually help a wider group of people know? Because it's not going to work from somebody stood up here. It definitely ain't going to work that way.
Just a couple comments on that.
Yeah, go for it.
So one of the things that I'm super excited about is that there's people talking about this that are not me. And I'm really happy about that, because what that means is, so if you go back 4 years ago, there was no such thing as an idea of what corporate branding was, or even how to apply a corporate branding. So the step, we're always, from one step to the next. The easy step is to be able to say, here's a resource that allows us, who's friendly enough that allows us to work with them. In other words, most designers, you bring them in from the outside, you pay a lot of money, and you don't own anything, and there's not a lot of, but here's somebody who's willing to coach people and work with people, and even if the temperaments and things like that sometimes are a little bit, tough for some people to navigate, it's like, this was the best resource at this particular time. And now that people are actually talking about, hey, we should protect the brand, then it's like, okay, now we're in a place where, a year from now, we should be releasing any brand updates and refresh things. Having gone through, we have a defined process, we understand where to go to find the updates, and we have an implementation of pastors and leaders have owned, and their team leaders underneath them have owned the responsibility of protecting brand. For me, that's the aim, not the brand. I don't care what color it is, I don't care what it looks like, I don't care if anybody likes it or not. My thing is we have a building, whether you like it or not, that represents brand. It's the principle of consistency of brand that I was aiming at. as we build in, that principle where everybody's like, yes, we understand the value. What are the value? And this is why, this goes to your second question of why bring other people into it. It's just like it's hard for you as a pastor to talk about the importance of people in the church funding the ministry when the pastor has a possible interest in that, get a wage from the ministry. You know, it's nice to bring in someone from the outside. And you have somebody that is in the most knowledgeable, in the most involved, communicating. You know, we did this in 2019, it was Paul Thompson and myself, and the fact that Mark is the one that is calling out Paul, the fact that Mark is the one that's saying, I did not know that there was a / branding thing on the website. I had no idea that existed. That excites me. You know, I'm like, this is stuff that I've been looking for. Now that we're at this place, then the right questions are being asked. Is okay, so now every brand should evolve, every brand should change, because especially in these days, things change. However, how it changes is extremely important. And not only that you're getting input from people like focus groups, but especially important, you're giving room for professional input. Because the focus group people don't understand like, I've been on a 25-year journey with Paul, where the first logo I had for World Harvest Bible Church back then, it had a crest, it had wheat, it had all this stuff because that's what I thought a good church logo looked like. And he had to train me that actually, you, like with Nike, the logo's just a little swish, but you put all the other stuff in the background. And the logo is, you know, so you can change and do all kinds of things differently, but yet still have corporateness. And, you know, all the different marketing campaigns. Now, on the other hand, we've had to educate Paul that we don't have a £5 million, like, because he's done Land Rover, he's done Reebok, he's done pharmaceutical companies, he's done, you know, bands, he's done a lot of pubs, you know. So, and he has to understand that we have different needs, like every a month or Sunday sometimes is a different ministry series. So you can't have everything the same color because it just becomes the, you know, like, it's like the, you know, what do you call it?
Wall paint.
Charlie Brown's teacher, wah, you know, it's like, it's the no, it just becomes that way. So he's in the education, but the cool thing is I like that here's a non-church person that is willing to walk that journey with us, who actually we can send him a thing. This is what I do. I'll go to Life Church, I'll pull off something from Life Church and I'll send it to him and say, can you go church this? And then he sends it back with like, it's horrible, it's rubbish, whatever, but here's what it is. Like, thanks, we'll use that. And so it's, I can't do, I mean, there's nobody else that I can do that with. Secondly, Club 1040 pays a, what is it now?
Monthly wage.
Was it
Retainer, isn't it?
Yeah, we pay
$1,500 per month as a retainer, and Go Church gets that free.
Yeah.
So just so everybody knows, there's value to that. Now, Club 1040 takes advantage of that too, but he gave to this church, he gave 15 years of free service. He sowed that for 15 years, and so this is a loyalty period back to him. However, he himself, first of all, he's older, but he himself realizes that there's a sell-by date on this, and at some point, in the very near future, I think, we need to find who is that other comparable resource that we can look to, and it needs to be of a different generation, and that will work with us in the same kind of way to fill that gap, and then do a proper evaluation of all of these things together, and then do a big launch at a particular time. I don't know, maybe Manchester's 26 years old, right? 27 this April?
27 this year, yeah.
This April?
Because I came 27 years ago this year.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you can't line up with 30 years because 3 years maybe is too far from now. But, you know, there might be a thing where you can reline a whole refresh branding and have all that in place. But what you're saying is so vitally important. It's figuring out how to make it so that every new person comes in, there's a branding orientation.
And building on what you're just saying, if we rebrand, let's say we rebranded next year, how's everyone going to get on board with that? Because the process behind now will need to be in place for that. So it is a really important discussion this, because we've got to make sure that we then end up with a consistency and that we protect it, because what always happens when you switch brands, like renew it, refresh it, anything like that, is that people still have the old stuff on the wall, but like saved in their computer settings, and then they start doing something, don't realize. So let's say you change the font from Times New Roman to Calibra or something, or Arial or whatever, something like that. They've all got everything still saved as Times New Roman, so everything goes out with the old thing rather than the new thing.
There's a rollout.
There's a
It has
rollout.
to be very purposeful and intentional.
So, but actually we're not at the place yet where we've got everybody necessarily doing the right stuff now with our current brand, and that feeds into all this. So I realise it's half
But I'm
past now.
excited, we're really moving forward in the right
It's
direction. Yeah.
brilliant, isn't it? So can I take 10 more minutes and we take it out of lunch?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, do that.
Stop trying to get out your session, Rob.
I'll give you 30 minutes.
He,
Time away to everybody else.
he threatened me last night he wasn't going to come to my sessions.
And then he's gonna stand up and like, they only gave me 5 minutes.
Man.
Oh, amazing. Right, so if we can have like 10 minutes around your table. Sorry, I'll put the questions back up. They've disappeared off. And these questions may not be the best way of wording the questions, but hopefully you've got my heart behind what we're trying to do.
Sorry,
Thank you.
we have allowed extra space at the end, so if you need to keep going till lunchtime and we can move things over.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, let's just see how long we take on this discussion, because I think it is important to have the discussion, isn't it? Because
Thank you for keeping it.
that's all right. Right.
Yeah,
Not with time, but yeah. Not with the time.
What's really exciting is that children's worker in about 6 months' time is going to be the leader of the children's worker, or whatever it is, and they want to produce a leaflet, and they're not going to be able to produce a leaflet or a letter or anything without not knowing that, the guidelines. So it's really, it is important.
Brilliant. Let's just spend sort of 10 minutes or so around our tables going through these questions, and then we'll try and get some ideas. So the main thing is how do we get everybody who's existing to be aware, and how do we train them? That's the first thing. And then how do we do it with new people coming in, which will probably overlap a lot with the first one, I know, but just,
We have a guy. Yeah, well, Simon. Simon is ours. So like when I look at tomorrow's session, as somebody who's I don't know, but as somebody who's not a senior pastor, I look at tomorrow's session and say I'm giving up a whole day of my time with, because we don't get paid, we're volunteers, so I'm giving up my time to learn about something that I have absolutely nothing to do with, and that I've been a part of the church for we're going on 10 years in October is Bradford. I haven't had anything to do with brand or design in 8 years. I've never had, because we have somebody that will say, hey, we need this done, he'll do it. So I think one of the key things is why is it important to me? Because otherwise this is a waste of my time. And why isn't it a breakout session for the people who need to do it, and then looking at what will actually benefit our leaders.
But you are a leader.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So I think that's what,
Generally, I think
like,
someone like
it's a bit like,
So, like the brand should be built around the message. Apple doesn't say that.
It's not my.
so I put down here,
I know.
do it for team sport,
Even talking about
but Joe Blogs doesn't need to.
advertising,
These things,
Yeah.
different
Joe
book,
Blogs does. Joe Blogs, we are going to throw when people want us to. Joe Blogs might be Joe Blogs today, but not tomorrow.
so you can't say, but you know, but
So that's,
They didn't start there.
they didn't use
The word that he used.
yeah, it might be Joe Blogs.
And I can see, I can see it from that perspective as well. But then there are people who Christina does our hospitality. But then there's nothing that we ever produce for hospitality, and it's like, so answering this question is the first thing that we need to come out the gate is explain why you need to be a part of this conversation and why you need to be, and like, are we just being told this is what it is, or do we actually have a say? Because there are things that, what, like, we feel, not we. So I do talk with Simon a bit about the design. We got an Easter thing. I talk with him. So I say, hey, can you do this within the guidelines? At what point do the guidelines stop being guidelines and become handcuffs, stopping people from creatively expressing something? It is kind of like, is another thing that I think we look at, because we have a really long top address line, and if you go by the brand guideline and line everything up, like, it looks done. Yeah, so at what point does the guideline become a hindrance to actually looking good?
I've done things, the logo does not work in the top corner, all about order, and I had to put it in because I can't get the logo on there any other way. Like, there was just no way. Like, I'm not a designer, I don't know how to change everything. Like, talk about, like, you don't have programs and stuff, but actually it needs to be something that Joe Bloggs can do without any training, without any, like, I do all outputs, everything. I have zero training, and I have Canva. It's like an amateur program that is very restrictive in what you can and cannot do. I can't follow all the guidelines. Like, I can't follow it. I can't do them all. No point in, you cannot insist someone does something without equipping them to do it. And unless we are going to do the equipping, which for Liverpool means someone has to design all our stuff. That's the only way that we will follow, be able to follow the guidelines. But we don't have that. That's not, there's no availability. I worked all at Christmas to produce our banners. Like, I worked on Christmas Day to do because the design had been asked. And would Full Thompson say they are brand guidelines? I have absolutely no idea. But can I do anything else? No. So I think it's, we do need to train people. We do need to tell them that they
Even on this, everything. So our website.
I don't think that's quite what I was
I'm like,
looking at. If I look at, no, but so this
yeah, and then I got an email saying Liverpool doesn't have an excuse for how to do it from Full Thompson. I'm like,
shows a number of things and what you can do. This is the bit that illustrate this is, he shows what you can do.
The other thing I keep reminding you, you look at everything on the screen that's this big and it's backwards. And like, you've got to remember that most people are looking at it on the phone or whatever. So, he's on that journey, and we push back on those things, but just try to do it in a way where it's, you know, just like we give and take our battles a little bit.
so like the website, and everything,
But it was
like our brand should be
because there are times.
So like grace, you know, because right now, like, how it's being talked about is that these aren't guidelines; these are written in stone tablets, and you're not able to be flexible with it. Like, I can make something internal for the youth, I might do it wrong, but the youth are like, oh, that's not aligned with the B of the Bradford. No one's going to notice. Or
and also I made a go play.
I don't think we even have to have that. I don't think we have to have, it's good enough for us. That's what's great is it's done, like you have a message say, you have a mission say.
Helvetica-ish, not Helvetica.
Here's something, so let's say you're doing a series.
I don't have Helvetica because you have to pay for it. So I have to use the cheaper version. Helvetica-ish. Now I have paid for it.
With people from different,
But when I actually did it, like, that's what I had to do. There was no resources. I
what
couldn't
I
send
would do is I'd say, okay, here's what I like, here's what I like, and then ask, what would you do with this? And then if he sends something, it's like, no, that's not what I wanted. I want something more like this. I want this.
I will leave Go Church and
The thing with Paul that I've learned is if you're not careful, he'll don't tell him like, move this here, I don't direct him, but I'll say, it's too dark. It doesn't paint the right picture, it needs to be lighter.
I'm ambivalent.
This
So
isn't functional.
the lime green
It's
colour,
small.
like
This
shocking
means the
colours.
action on here is hidden, I can't see the action is
The dark,
somehow,
too
and I
dark,
won't say
too
don't.
bright, isn't it?
In the past, I'd be like, bold me, bold this, bold that.
Being clear, I think, because Simon, when he does all our social media stuff, he puts a green filter over it because I think he feels that it has to be green. So if, it being clearly communicated what we can and can't do. But also, you say, what if Simon goes out? And then I have no access to anything. So we need to have a place where the leadership can access the logos, the guidelines, everything. Yeah. And then, like with the email about the Beirut doing the website, and saying we can contact, is it Paul? We all looked at each so the website when Beirut redid it, and it's like, oh, you can talk to Paul about redoing it. We all looked at each other like, who's Paul, and how do we contact him? Yeah, so nobody knows anything, and there's no access to it. So even if Simon is gone, I'm not doing anything because I don't have access to it.
In that situation, you would pass.
Not only that, but
We did have to do something.
Paul and David need to
You
work.
probably text me. Hey, Becky.
I know, right?
I get all the questions from Kenny.
I began to do more on the Raymond Connect side. So, but if you guys would support that, because you're very close to David, if David could use Paul for external work, he has, Paul's one of the best Photoshop persons in the world. Literally,
What? No, it was all Barney.
Barney's not here.
Well, I mean, you want me to lie?
It was all you, Barney. There was only like 2 of those squishy ones.
I only had the crunchy one, like the crumbling one.
You've had 2 each.
I was one and then Rolo. No, what is it? No, the lifesaver one. Polo.
I've had an extra strawberry, 2 soft mints, and 2 crumblies. That's
Only the crumbling.
He says, you give me the word.
crumblies.
what Paul will do is he'll create
I don't know what they are. I've never seen them before. I think they're a bit weird. Yeah, I think they're a bit weird. I don't know that I like them.
The stuff that Simon does is super.
Okay.
Maybe.
Sorry to interrupt conversations. Obviously, we're going to go into lunch after this, so you can carry on chatting about it all lunchtime. over your sandwich. Okay, shall we just go around just the tables? I think these were the 2 main tables having conversations, but there was a little bit of conversation going on in this one as well. I just want to say, Julia, what do you want to say there? As Pastor Allen's just emailed round to everybody a couple of extra things that Paul had put together to help us. One's around social media and one's around QR codes, just to try and help with that. I think, so yeah, so let's, where do we want to start? Do you guys want to contribute?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, Pastor Becky just had a great idea, and that was
Can you speak up a bit?
Pastor Becky had a... No, you're not giving me that. Pastor... Oh, it's not on, is it?
It is on.
It's not on these
No,
speakers.
it's not on this one. That's go.
Okay, Pastor Becky had a great idea that, you know, Pastor Barney talking yesterday about having the video clips of different learning, that actually we do one on branding. And I'd written down an online starter pack, or I also put down a paper starter pack for those who like paper. But for Pastor Rob and Julia, have you been, if you start a new job, you get a starter pack, you get an induction. Have you had an induction? Okay, right. Okay, so that's going forward. If we're going to plant 22 churches, we're going to need induction pack. So I thought that was brilliant. Some of the things that these guys were saying, why would someone like from hospitality want to come here tomorrow and hear about branding? But I personally pointed out that they might be in hospitality this week, but in a few weeks' time, they might not be in hospitality. But then it was pointed out that in Bradford, they have Simon, who it goes through. So they've not had a need to learn and haven't actually been equipped or given the authority to do anything. And so I put to them, what happened if Simon got sick or Simon went on holiday, then we're not believing for Simon to get sick, by the way. But, that actually... Yeah, we'll pray for him, yeah. But actually that it is important that there isn't just one person who knows about it. And then they were saying, but then they actually don't even know Paul, don't have a relationship with Paul and wouldn't even know how to contact Paul. So that's something to look into. Also, there was talk about if you are trying to do something yourself, there's a lot of things out there that they're using different systems, and for the right font, you have to pay more. And secondly, the logo doesn't always fit with everything, even if you try and place it in the right-hand corner or left-hand corner. So then what do you do? And there's a little bit, they were saying that maybe it needs to be a bit more grace in the area. It feels that it's not very flexible and it's more law. So then what happens is then we just stick the green on it. And if we just stick the green on it, then everyone else will be happy. But I think more teaching and equipping is required. So there you go.
Brilliant. Okay. I think one of the things that, just to add on to this, that we've got to be really careful, and it kind of builds a little bit on something Pastor Matt was saying earlier, that Paul won't necessarily be the person forever, but actually, once we've got to 22 churches, even if Paul was still here, he can't have 22 people ringing him to ask him to do stuff, to help stuff, do stuff like that, because that's not a good use of that resource. And actually, it doesn't show any growth or development from our part within that. So I think I want to throw out a thought that maybe we have a brand champion in each place, so whether it be a Simon or a Julian or whoever it may be in each location, but then those people maybe work with Paul to kind of get on board, so that then we have a localized person to be able to pick some of this up. So something like that. I don't.
A little bit of it also is the training of the type of images to try looking for. So when you're trying to use an image, having one that has space in particular places so that you can put text, so you can put stuff. Often we try and overlay text, and either you cause a problem because you've got a light going to dark and you use white or black, because it shifts, and that causes you a problem graphically to be able to see, or it goes up on there, and it's framed on that, up on there. That's better than we originally had, because we actually had quite linear, very, very business look. But by doing some adjustments, the slide up there has got to the corporate colours, but it's adjusted, isn't it? But there's room for text. And when we think about some of our flyers, I think we start with wrong images, and then we try and fit in what we're trying to do, because we've not learned how to look for right images.
And I'm glad you brought this slide up, because I don't think this slide meets any of our guidelines. But I was toying with the idea of, do I keep it and not use it and all the rest, and I thought, actually, no, I'm going to put it up to see what happens. And the thing is, we just accept something rather than necessarily getting it to be how it needs to be. And there needs to be a gradual process in this. We can't go from zero to, it's not like a light switch, we go from zero to on, off to on. just because we go, let's do brand guidelines. It doesn't work like that because it's a learning thing and there's so many people involved. And then some of the things that are being mentioned, I can already hear some of the comments coming out. I'm like going, that's not actually brand guidelines, that's just a style thing, and how, and we've got to work the differentiation between the two things, and that's really difficult from my experience of having chatted stuff through with Paul and Julian, and we've had lots of conversations in the office, and I even had a conversation with Paul 2 days ago, and I've come off the call and gone, I'm not sure I 100% agree with what Paul's saying, but that's a conversation I need to have with him at another time to kind of thrash this out and work it out and see where it fits in. But I've got the relationship enough with Paul that I can have that conversation. Yeah. And actually, if we don't invest, if we had a brand champion in each church, then if they don't invest in the time to build a relationship with Paul, we won't be able to get where we need to get. But that's, I don't want to, I'm feeding back here.
Can
on
I
this
say
day.
one thing? I'm the worst at logo and I get in trouble all the time from my daughter, so I'm the worst. The only thing I wanted to say is we need to appreciate Paul. We pay him pittance for what he does for us. And so he's so kind. He gets it done by the next morning. I feel bad every time I send him money because I know it's nothing compared to what he does and what he could charge. And so we need to keep that in the back of our mind whenever we're talking about the word Paul.
It's really, really, really good because actually, you know, Paul, like I say, has been absolutely phenomenal working with us. He really has, you know. And I think this is where you come into style versus guidelines. Paul has his own distinct style. If you receive one of his Christmas cards, it shines through in his style. It's not my style at all. I wouldn't want it at all like that. But what he's very, very good at is then working with our style if we give it to him and then making it work to fit. So within the guidelines. And I think that's the bit we have to kind of sometimes, we kind of get a bit stuck on it. We've just got to put green on everything. No, that's not right. That's just like putting some funny sticky plaster on, which actually isn't even right for the thing. So yeah. Was there any more thoughts on this take?
We had no thoughts.
No opinions.
Thanks, Rob. For your
Celebrate, celebrate, celebrate. I have no opinion.
Looking forward to your session this afternoon.
This 5-minute session. So I think talking about there's two things to help people kind of process through thinking about the why behind the what. Emphasizing the connecting with people is the end goal. And the better we do it, the more people we can reach. So that should always be that side of it. But there's other values too. Like, for example, it creates momentum. Because people, instead of one person looking one way, another person looking one way, another person looking one way, suddenly you see social media is got like, there's that from that, there's that from that. And I can see it, there's a connecting point from all of that. And it's like, wow, this thing's growing. Wow, this thing's got momentum. So it creates momentum, which is exciting, which is attractive, which again helps us connect with more people. A huge one is the more unified we can have in our corporate identity, it saves time and money. Can you quickly go to bamboozoo.com? I think this is really important for us to have at this level because I think the brand protectors are in this room. And
what am I going to?
Bamboozoo.com.
Bamboozoo.com, isn't it? That's it.
Yeah. And then go to, just go forward through the projects.
20 projects, 20.
You just keep forwarding through that. Maybe pull it up a little bit so we can see the more of the screen. Keep going. Okay, go down. So this is the original Rhema side of things. Now, I just want to mention this. When I was asked to do Rhema, I looked around at all the Rhema. All the Rhemas had different identities. All of them did. And so I came to Paul and I said, listen, this is an opportunity for us to help Rhema in some way. And so when we first got all the European guys together, I said, what do you think, instead of everybody paying thousands of euros per person to do a branded website, design, and all that kind of stuff, what if we combined our efforts and we designed basically like a corporate identity package, and then and we did it in a way so that the reason that little logo, the login, the little icon logo, is so you could put Rhema in front of it and you could put any location after it, was the idea. And then also the idea is eventually it'd be really easy to do an app with that logo. That was kind of the idea behind it. But the point is that all, like the website and all that stuff, there was a template, and then everybody only had to pay like 350 euros or 500 euros a piece as they expanded. So it was meant to be very easy for everybody to do that. Can you go down just a little bit more? The certificates and things like that. But honestly, the execution of the idea, there was an embracement of the principle. The execution of it was a little bit challenging. And then let's go through the next project. You can just click on the link bottom. See, okay, now go down with this. Same kind of idea. And you can see they're incredibly different designs, but I want you to see different execution of different. That's a brochure. Keep going down. These are mail outs that we've mailed out to people. Thank you cards. These are, what do you call it? Instagram, social media. This is social media stuff. Our website, or no, that's that's a website, but he also does desktop type things as well that you can push out to places. Keep going down. Okay, so talking about kids. So the idea is you can see there's a link between Club 1040 Kids, but it's got its own logo and the website, etc. But you can see there's a link between the two things. So he's been able to apply some corporateness, but yet it's very different. It's more kid-friendly. Keep going down. That's a brochure, slides and communication. Then keep going down. Mugs, keep going down. This was, by the way, that was a campaign. Go back up again. Be the Movement campaign, go back up again. Be the Movement. So that's a particular campaign like you might have for an event. So it's corporate, but there's no logo on it. But you kind of know that it's a part of what we do. Keep going. And this is a different campaign, very, very different look. And so the point being, in those things, we probably actually caused Paul anguish with that by saying we want these things and stuff. Look, I think, cool hoodie. We've never printed that hoodie, but I'd like that hoodie. Different desktop screensavers and things like that too. Then keep going though, because there's Go Church. Okay, first of all, I want you to see this one. If you guys know Jody Karsten in Traverse City, Paul did their logo, and they implement it so well themselves. So he basically just did that corporate design, and that's it. But if you ever go to citychurchtc.org, I think it is, City Church, they have an incredible execution in their buildings and facilities and all the stuff they do by implementing. All he did was the corporate design, and they took it and they applied it in the way that they needed to in their place. Then let's walk through the Go Church side of things. And you can kind of see the differences. Those images right there were us talking to Paul and saying, look, you can't have everything green. And so he tried to begin to show that you can do different colors as long as you keep the font sizes and the font style similar. And you don't even have to have logos. He's got logos on those, so if we share them, but you could have that without a logo and it would be okay. Keep going. Banners, shirts, keep going. Hoodies, websites, keep going. I don't know exactly everything that's on here. Website, okay, that's it. So the why behind it saves everybody money. It saves everybody time. It provides an excellence that people can't do in-house by providing resources, especially if we had a shared drive where all like you said very wisely, that you start dropping the location, and that was mainly for internalization, and it was mainly for us to be able to understand each other and how we relate to each other in the early days. But Nike doesn't have Nike USA and Nike UK, it's just Nike. And so we can drop that in all our outside stuff now. We can start doing that and just Go Church. And what that will do is that everything we create there could be then reused in different ways. So if it's a series that has a logo on it, or if it's a promotional flyer or anything like that, and as long as things are saved in a way where you can change the details of it, but keep the design of it, then that creates this huge library of resources that saves time, money, et cetera, that we can take advantage of with very little in-house expertise. And the last thing I want to say about the logo, something that might help in the promotion of the corporate identity is, I've always thought it would be cool. There's to assign meaning to there's actually 7 components of that. I don't see it anywhere. There's seven little components. And I thought if as a group of churches we were able to ascribe 7 points of meaning, 1 point for each one is like foundational values or something like that, it'd be kind of a cool thing. And the idea of the logo is that it has this idea of movement. It has this idea of going in all directions at the same time. So I thought if you ascribe meaning to it, and if that's a part of the onboarding of people, that also, like Nike, the swish, Nike represents that victory, doesn't it? Or the apple, if you understand the reasoning behind the apple, that it's the bite out of the apple, it goes to computer bite. The bite of computer. So most people don't know that now because the brand just has brand acceptance and awareness, but there's a ascribed meaning to it that's kind of interesting. It helps people identify with it in a different way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we found that we did 5. It seemed like 7 was too many on the wall, but we might go back.
Oh no, not those. In the logo itself. That's not logo. In the logo itself, there's 7 pieces to that component. And I don't have any 7 reasons for it, but if, in fact, you wanted to attach identity, some kind of identity to it, it would help with identity.
Brilliant. So we're going to have to wrap up there for time because obviously lunch is ready. I think probably from this, we probably need to create some sort of brand task force, as we like doing that. Champion.
From an action point of view, every church needs a brand champion.
Yeah, so every church needs a brand champion as an action. And then I think we've probably got to take this further in terms of discussing how we take the brand forward. But I think within that, we're also going to need to create a brand champion for each church. But then I think we're going to have to work out how we begin to train within both the brand champions, but then the wider thing within that. So that's another action we're going to have to take away, that brand still needs to be looked at, discussed, worked on, and picked up to take that further.
Action point, in that group, whatever, at that social media, that new social media one, that helps us set what we look like on social media.
Okay, cool. So we need to make sure the brand champion group is working on social media stuff as well within that. Okay. Shall I just say grace whilst I'm up here and then we can go for lunch? Okay, yeah. Father, we thank you that you are a great God who is always good, always doing us good, and always blessing us. And Father, we just lift you up over all of the rest of today. Father, we just thank you for the discussions we've had this morning and those we're going to have this afternoon. And Father, we just pray for your blessing over the lunchtime. Father, we thank you this food is blessed and it's going to be a blessing to our bodies. Father, we just thank you bless all those who've made it. Father, that you just give back to them abundantly as they've served us, Father. And we just want to say thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 No, that's a really good way to do it. This was his solution for that, for this. I think that might be, that's where this is from. So that might be a better